So welcome everyone on this roundtable conference. So basically today's topic will revolve around the hijab ban, and we will discuss the different facets of this debate. And today I will be moderating myself, Lovanshi. I'll be moderating, and my co-moderator will be Nandini. As So basically, as we all know that recently in January, Karnataka College decision to bar entry to Muslim girls wearing the hijab had sparked protests and discussion on hijab in India. And there was a landmark decision by the court which has ruled that hijab is not an essential to Islamic religion, and it could have implication across the country. And they basically upheld that the state government order to ban the headscarves in the classroom will be allowed, and it will be sustained. And they held that allowing Muslim women to wear the hijab in classroom would hinder their emancipation and go against the constitutional spirit of positive secularism. And there is also, so I would quote few lines from the judgment to give an idea of the essence of the judgment, that, and I quote, there is sufficient intrinsic material within the scripture itself to support the view that wearing hijab has been only recommendatory, if at all it is. What is not religiously made obligatory, therefore, cannot be made a quintessential aspect of the religion through public agitations or by passionate arguments in court. So, hijab and other types of head and face coverings used by Muslim women across the world has long been at the center of these efforts. And basically, if we look beyond India, West has also historically viewed hijab as a symbol of female oppression, and it has waged numerous legal and cultural wars against it, often against the protest of women wearing it. And this whole issue also gets the international attention when the Nobel Prize winner Malala Yousafzai mentioned that asking Indian leaders to do something to stop the marginalization of Muslim women. So in this today's discussion and this ongoing hijab controversy in Karnataka, we can gather that it is not only an interplay between patriarchy and communalism, but also an adopted Western gaze. And to start the debate, one of the arguments stems from some Hindu right-wing groups and also India's elite in the intelligentsia group, that young Muslim women do not have agency, and they appear to have convinced that these women must have been brainwashed by their oppressive families or the Islamic orthodoxy to want to wear this garment. And so basically they think that they must be tricked into thinking this way, or they must be safe from their families and culture, they must be safe from themselves. So I think we have a set of group of people who believe in this. So anybody who wants to pitch in and who believe that there can be, what do they think about this argument? Anyone? Shohan, you would like to pitch in?
Sure. So, basically, as you said, India, quoting you, follows the positive secularism,
Right.
which reminded me of the similar controversy that happened in France and more recently also in Turkey, where they don't follow the facet of secularism that India follows, where in their secularism is essentially intervening in religion to ensure that there is secularism. So, in this regard, I feel there are two different ways of looking into secularism. Um, the from the facet from which the court or the university or any institution who bars someone to regulate how they practice their religion comes under the negative secularism part, where the institution is intervening in intervening in the matters of religion to ensure that secularism persists, so that there is, in the public sphere of life, there is a minimal sense of the influence of religion per se, right? So that technically, like legally speaking, I don't think that is how Indian secularism work, which, like, throughout legal spheres, that Indian secularism has been termed as the secularism different from Western secularism, even American liberal secularism, which is different from French negative secularism. So in that aspect, I believe that to this degree, intervening and regulating the religious practices would be in defiance of the secular spirit of India per se. Not talking about the whole secular ideology, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. Shreya, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, agreeing with Sean, it is a betrayal of the kind of secularism that India intended to follow after partition. The intention has been there. The intention has been there to respect the church as the separation happens. Well, not the church, but like the idea of the church and the state. The state does not intervene in the matters of the church. The church operates and it awards the religious body certain protections, and so does it. And there is a certain right to religious freedom. Necessity for that to happen in practicing religion. I don't understand why are we talking about the necessity. The Quran may say something, but this is the choice. It's a religious and choice that these women are making, actively making and fighting for the choice. According to law, from what I understand of the law, they the law should be protecting this freedom of theirs. And second of all, this is not a private institution that they were fighting this fight against. In a private institution, at least there is a certain um, the laws, or the rules of the private institution will be their own. This is a government college. The government college is supposed to follow the rule of the law of the government, and the government has to have the intention, even though that is in no way happening in practice, has to have at least the intention of practicing positive secularism, which would award certain freedoms and certain respect to their choices, which is not happening. So it doesn't seem like a judgment, or even the practices that have come up during this whole discourse. They don't seem to be something that follows the word of law.
Definitely. I think definitely as how Shohan mentioned about the secularism, so the intervening state, to what extent a state can intervene in a religious matter, and the negative and positive secularism, which are the positive secularism, which our Indian state posed to have it. And I think you mentioned about women choices, and I believe that we can move to deeper into this, into the question that how does this banning affects women choices in broader social political dimension, also at the international levels, how it targets marginalized women, and depending upon the nature of the state. Anyone? Yeah, Nandini?
So I would like to elaborate on that concept of, not the concept, but more of the idea of a woman's choice. So one very common argument that's often made is along the lines of, a little girl probably doesn't know what she wants or she does not want, and is her family pressuring her into choosing to wear a hijab. And women who are brought up in such a strict household, like, we need to wean them off such patriarchal notions of the reasons behind such garments exist. But now this is where feminism plays a role. So feminism isn't about allowing a woman to wear jeans just because she wants to wear jeans. It's also allowing a woman to wear at whatever religious um, garment that she wants. It's allowing her to wear a hijab, it's allowing her to wear a burqa because that's what she feels comfortable in. So if you look at the history behind why people wore a burqa or a sari, I'm changing a direction and bringing burqa into this to make my point about why um, these things came around, is more along the line because women find a certain comfort in these clothes, considering that when you step out and people are going to look at you, and when they look, they just want to feel safe and secure and not have to think about what they're wearing constantly. And if that's what gives them comfort, they should be allowed to wear that. If a little girl is brought up in a household where all the women are wearing a hijab and a burqa, then she should be allowed to follow the footsteps of her family, because that's what family and home and safety looks like to her. Furthermore, there are so many people who didn't wear a hijab before, but later on chose to wear a hijab in order to show solidarity towards their um, fellow Muslim people who are being mistreated just for wearing something. And this is some, so it's symbolism, but I believe that this symbolism is not something that's harming anybody around them. It is that a part of their identity, and nobody in a country which is as democratic and secular as India claims to be, nobody should be curtailed from um, putting forth that identity or accepting that identity of theirs. So that's one point
Right,
regarding.
right. Yeah. Sanchali, you want to add on to this? Sorry, you were on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So basically, what I wanted to say was kind of like what the first question and even the second question that you asked was. So, like in India, like basically, we have seen how the Muslims have kind of been oppressed because of the triple talaq case, also, and then even with now the hijab case. So, like the urge of the whole Hinduvata and even the elite like liberals trying to like they have the urge that they want to like save the Muslim woman, but they need to know that the Muslim women have their own choice and freedom of speech. So, like the sign of wearing a hijab is actually not an oppression, and rather like the feminists and the government, they should concentrate on like the laws of the country, which is like if the society punishes somebody for not wearing the hijab, that should be more concerned. And if the society punishes someone who is wearing it, that should be the concern, not like going and making laws that if a person wishes to wear and like not like it's not a kind of oppression. That is what I mean to say. It should be like their own personal choice and their own right, like what they should feel like wearing.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean this tussle between the choice or the court interpretation of the essential practice really goes on to say how much we do need to delve more into this topic. Yeah, Shreeya, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just to add on to it, I mean, this idea of saving women on is particularly strong in this context. The idea that just because you wear a hijab, you're somehow oppressed, and somehow just because you're not wearing it, you're not. It's presumptuous to another degree. Oppression looks different, and choices look different. I mean, a lot of times, and that's the thing about realizing the fundamentals of intersectional feminism. Every woman in this world is has a plethora of identities, and being a woman is just one of them. And it's not just for women, of course. Again, feminism is not just for women, but the idea is that there are other identities that intersect uh, with their ideas of feminism, and for one of them is oppression that Muslim women face, and at times expressing their religious identities through outfits which other religions do as well. Indians do that, Hindus do that, Sikh women do that. So a lot of other religious women are doing that constantly. So why can't we award the same freedom to Muslim women? And why are we trying to make a choice for them? This is a choice that they're making. And again, coming from a place, so I'm a person who's come from a convent school, and in my convent school, no religious paraphernalia was allowed, barring a cross, which is again, but this is a private institution. But they were, you know, that's a difference. That this is again a form of bias reasoning, but this is a Christian school. So, and this is a monotheistic place, but India is not a monotheistic place. It's a multicultural nation. So, how are we allowing this to happen? Just a one.
Right, right, right. Yeah, Nandini, you can go on.
So I just wanted to expand a little bit on the entire. So there's one point that Sanchali mentioned about how women's safety plays a role in the entire ban of the hijab. Uh, if you look into the past, you'll see that women's safety is often used as a Trojan horse when it comes to politics, when it comes to religious politics, especially. Just we claim it for women's safety, but ultimately it's just to push forward a propaganda without an ounce of thought given to actual safety for women. And we were talking about little girls who are probably in sixth or seventh standard being told that they should not wear a hijab, which is, again, in my opinion, unfair. And furthermore, another point that I wanted to talk about is modesty. So now, for some for some reason, or there's a certain belief that in order to be feminist or in order to be not oppressed, as Shreya had mentioned before, you need to wear a certain amount of clothes or a certain type of clothes, which in a way does go against what feminism stands for. So just because a person feels safe or chooses to dress modestly or to wear a headscarf, as we're talking about over here, it doesn't mean that she's oppressed, which is again a point which the fellow speakers have made. And this is something. So again, that's one issue that a certain category of people go wrong at.
Right. Yeah, I think as you mentioned about the political motivation and this trope of saving women has kind of surfaced when this ban happened. So the whole, as I mentioned earlier, also the Western argument of the subjugation of women and them not having agency, also kind of took place not only by the the elite liberals, but also by the Hindu nationalists, the group. So I think there, this the aspect of political motivation behind the whole controversy also arises, and how if you relate to the feminism, so it also kind of raises question how feminism should react to it, like because they also claim to care for women rights, and then we have men who are coming up with this saving complex. So this kind of, I think, yeah, I think we should also look to the political motivation around this issue. Anybody who wants to pitch in? I think someone raised their hand. I might have missed it. Yeah, Sanchali, I'm sorry.
So, with the whole concept of political motivation and with the feminism, so I think
Yeah.
there is a very thin line of like what the term feminism means, which a lot of people, which a lot of feminists kind of overcross it. So instead of looking at what the women want and their rights, they think that the women should like live freely as like whatever they feel like doing. No, this is not what feminism is. It means like something being equal to what the men want. And linking it with political aspects right now, like the political movements are just taking it as a use of their own benefit so that they can get the votes and all to their bank. And what I mean, if India is a secular nation, we have so many religions. And as Shreya mentioned, like every religion has their own aspect of identity. Like even while coming to Sikh men, they have their own turban. But how are like how are we like just telling that it's not a sign of oppression for them, but it is a sign of oppression for Muslim women? And you cannot, I mean, this is where the whole controversy is. And then even Article 19, which come like freedom of religion and like practice their own religion, wearing burqa is a sign of their own religion. If they do not choose to wear, that is their own choice. But if they do choose to wear, they can't be punished for it. It's not a sign of oppression at the end of the day. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
all.
Yes. Shreya, you can go on. Wait, I don't think. Yeah.
Okay, I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just saying, I mean, I understand. I mean, I understand the sense that I disagree with it, but I understand it, the idea of the white savior complex as well in this context of the idea, because the idea of enforced modesty, because it is not everywhere, it is not a choice. I mean, if you look at the guidelines of Taliban in Afghanistan, that is a mandatory action. So again, feminism as a discourse is extremely wide and extremely contradictory at times as well. If you look at liberal feminism and you look at communism and there is no stopping. There's Savarna feminism which will clash with intersectional feminism here, which what we are discussing. So there are a lot of clashes in the discourse in itself. There is a kernel of truth here. We can't ignore the kernel of truth that these are minors who are practicing religion, who are practicing a certain kind of outfit. They're not adults. This is oftentimes a choice that is enforced by family, but we also have to realize that while this might be true, this is also true for other religions and other people and other women in different cultures. So I'm just saying that there is a kernel of truth in this outrageous argument as well.
Right. Yeah. And I think not only in India, so basically it's found everywhere. So I am a French politician defended the hijab ban in France by saying that so the law restricting religious symbolism and they are in the service of women's empowerment and public safety. So I want to put this point forward. So how this law that is that is supposed to protect people's religious freedom being used to restrict the same, by taking examples not only from India but beyond it. Yeah. Anyone? Shohan, Akshita, anyone, you want to put forth your opinions? Anyone can come forward. Wait, should I move on to the next?
Could you repeat what you said?
Yeah. So basically, I think, so not just taking India's example, we can go beyond where I gave in a quote by French politician, supporting the hijab ban. So are there any instances, people, you think that which can be handy to explore to kind of distangle this debate? Or should I just move on to the next aspect of it?
Can I add something?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So like, since you brought in the different perspectives on this, depending on different countries, in this aspect, I believe that the concept, the nature and the role of religion in the society itself is very important, because secularism as a concept developed in West, like it is by essence, it is like, even though we can say that secularism did exist in Indian empires, like under the reign of Ashoka, but it as a concept developed in the mainly in the West, right? So it originated with the main role as separating the church from the state, which was very easy in Western context, because there was essentially only the church to separate. There was only one religion, right? Even though there were different facets of Christianity, essentially it was the same, right? But when we try to develop it into other civil like societies, um, for example, even other societies with one religion, for example, Turkey or any other um, Islamic country, where the difference is that Islam played a greater role in the personal lives of people than Christianity did. Like Islam was a fundamental aspect of not only like religious life, but also to an extent political life, because Ottoman Empire, for example, the head of the state was the head of the caliph, right? Was the head of uh, the nominal head of Islamic Ummah, right? So in that essence, if we take it to further degree, that where it is a completely heterogeneous society like, well, India, that there are different religions, then the degree of secularism, like if we compare that, yeah, secularism is like that there, so can we have it here? It won't work, right? So I guess the relationship of the religion or religions with the society historically as well as now, that is an important aspect to it.
True. Yeah, I think we have touched upon how religion feminism and political motivation goes on to comment upon the whole controversy. And although we have discussed the pointers which we think what went wrong in this, or what could be the implications of this, the judgment in India. So I would also like to point out on, how there is another leg of argument, and group of people, and which they believe that the hijab ban is justified. And I also want to bring forth this argument, if anyone wants to pitch in this one, since we would like to take a holistic approach of the issue, right? Akshita, yeah, Akshita.
Yes, I would like to go ahead. So,
Yeah.
I personally feel that the right to wear hijab, the demand for this is an outrageous demand to make the laws of an institute subservient to individuals' rights. Um, the reaction to the demand of the section of girls to wear the hijab actually turned up, like the reaction was that the Hindu students started turning up in saffron shawls. So those demanding the right to wear and represent their religious identity in public institutions not only violate the rules of that institution, but also the spirit of secularism, in ironically in the name of upholding it. So a lot of people keep on mentioning that there is politically, like this is politically motivated, but I feel that the court is not particularly against hijab, but stopping all forms of religious expression. Learned advocate general in the Karnataka High Court case, who was representing the state, brought to the notice of the court that there are several counter agitations involving students who want to gain entry to the same institution with saffron and blue shawls and other symbolic clothes, religious flags. So, considering all of this, the court restrained all students, regardless of their religion, from wearing saffron shawls, scarves, hijab, flags, etc., in the classroom. So, I would also like to quote what other judges of Madras High Court and Bombay High Court have held. Uh, Justice D. Bharata Chakravarti observed that it is really shocking that somebody is going for hijab and some for the topi. Is it one country or is it divided by religion or something like that? Even the Karnataka High Court held that what is paramount, the country or religion? Further on, I would like to mention that the right to practice religion is not an absolute right. It is subject to several restrictions and the rules of public morality. What Shohan and Shreeya said as a reply to their definition of secularism, I would like to say that it hardly needs to be mentioned that our country is a country of plural cultures, religions, languages. But being a secular state, it does not identify itself with any religion of its own. I recall Shreeya mentioning that it's a government college, but I rather feel it's all the more reason for a government entity to not support a particular religious group, either it's hijab or saffron or whatever, because secularism also means no religion being assigned to a public institution. um as far as what Sanchali mentioned, there is a right to speech and expression. Yes, every citizen has a right to profess and practice any faith of choice, is also true. However, these rights are again not absolute and susceptible to reasonable restrictions as provided by the Constitution of India. Even the Karnataka High Court very clearly held that prescription of school uniform is only a reasonable restriction, completely constitutionally permissible, and which something which the students cannot simply object to. um Talking about the uniform, so this dress code is to ensure that there's a homogeneous environment in a classroom, and it is to ensure that all students appear equal even if they're not. And this again applies not to the hijab but also to a saffron shawl and every other item that violates the uniform code. uh, Imagine lawyers demanding, the right to appear in court and shorts, or pilots refusing to fly unless they're allowed to dress the way they want. It is something like that. Institutions of learning are simply institutions of equality, but unfortunately such over display of religious symbolism of one's body is creating boundaries that people identify, so that people can identify different religious as different religious people. The fact that a common uniform of a standard cloth is recommended in a school is to ensure that the rich are not wearing fine and shiny and the poor are not coming in rough and tough clothes. That's it. It's that simple. And we already live, I mean, in India, we already live in a polarized society. The teachers throughout the day look at through the lens of religion. Someone's coming wearing orange, someone's in hijab. I mean, your clothing is shouting out loud about your religion. It's not how the system of an education institution works. um Also, another question I would like to ask my fellow mates: where do we draw the line? Anybody can start a religion. We at CNES can start a religion today and have all forms of weird things claiming them to be essential to our religion. And I mean, how would we expect the college to, agree to that? So there is no line, there is no boundary. Somewhere we have to stop. Another argument my fellow mates have been bringing forward is it's essential to Islam. While researching, I came across a very shocking observation that the headscarf, is it really essential for Islam? And it has held that it's not. Islam clearly mentions a veil. It does not mention a headscarf. The hijab that is worn to colleges in Karnataka is a distortion of Islam itself. I mean, and that it some people have also been claiming that it's a vestige of Wahhabi culture that has pervaded Islam under the influence of tyrannical regimes like the Taliban. So this essentiality to Islam is itself debated. um Shreeya also mentioned about saving women, specifically in this case. So I would like to respond to that argument, is that arguendo, even if we believe that it is an essential practice, the contradiction is borne out very clearly when the same individuals are going without burqa or hijab in malls and public places, and posting their own pictures without the hijab on social media platforms.
Wait.
Lovanshi, may I continue?
Yeah, sure.
So I was talking about the contradiction of the girls who are demanding this right are, not following it in other places. So further on, Nandini also mentioned about one's modesty. So I would like to ask her if hijab is actually about protecting one's modesty, then how come there is evidence of the same individuals displaying very contradictory behavior in other public places? Um, Also, Sanchali mentioned about Sikhism and turbans, but I would like to quote a former Delhi High Court judge, Mr. R.S. Sodhi, who has argued that even if a turban were essential for Sikhs, the right to wear it would not be absolute. So it would be again subject to the same laws and rules of the country. So I don't think so that argument stands, and it's really not about that. In my conclusion, I would like to say that the insistence on wearing the hijab violates everything: the laws of the institution of the college, the idea of a dress code, the concept of secularism, and even of the idea of the veil prescribed in Islam. The hijab is only one place in the Indian society, the homes of the chauvinistic Muslims who want to protect their women from the male gaze on the basis of some distorted version of Islam. The women subjected to this kind of mental, physical, and theological subjugation need to revolt against this distortion. But until they do, I guess the hijab ban is justified. And again, it's not about hijab, it's about all kinds of religious symbols, saffron shawls, blue, green flags, and everything. It's all about the school and the code that everybody needs to follow. That's where I would rest my case.
May I respond?
Yeah, sure. Go on.
To start off, I think firstly I would respond to the idea that I think a lot of us agreed that its essentialness has nothing to do with the fact the essentiality of it does not have to do with the fact of the personal choice. And as a country that holds liberty as high as it does in its constitution, as it mentions it in the preamble, liberty of choice is something that we are all subject to. And we are in no position to be judging or gauging whether or not this essentiality should play into it. But you mentioned the fact that they don't wear hijabs in malls. That's not our argument. Our argument is about them being able to wear a hijab, which is part of their religious customs, in the school. This official body that is restricting this. That is the argument. What they do other than this, it's their prerogative, as it should be. This body of the government, which is an extension of the government, is banning them wearing this hijab. And second of all, while I recognize that a uniform creates uniformity, it is coming from a very singular point of existence. As a queer person, I would like to tell you that I feel I felt extremely dysphoric in any kind of uniform that I wore or that I was made to wear. I felt uncomfortable constantly. And and I hope I was brave enough. I regret that I wasn't as brave as these girls are right now fighting for their rights. And it's very similar in that capacity. Me being made to wear a feminine outfit to attend a certain institution, even when I don't completely identify with the feminine, is as restrictive as this is in many ways. It's my I wasn't afforded a choice. Neither are they being afforded a choice. This is their schooling. They just want to exercise their choice that the law should be awarding them. This is not a question of, I mean, this is not a question of rich or poor. This is something that the color of the hijab is in alliance with the uniform. I mean, these are certain. It's not like they're wearing a completely different outfit. And second of all, secularity, as high of an ideal as it is that we want to practice of positive secularism, it is of course impossible. A lot of researchers, the one that I would like to quote is Ashish Nandi in his anti-secular manifesto, and he talks about this as well. He talks about that attempting to be secular is an impossibility in a country like India, because you will have zealots and you will have problems at the level of the state. Separating the church and state is an impossibility. But when you think of the court, when you think of a court or the judicial body of India, it has always been a body that is meant to try and uphold this, and they're not doing so here. Second of all, matter of subjectivity. They're banning hijabs, they did not ban turbans. Turbans are still allowed in so many schools. The schools make accommodation for turbans, but they're not for hijabs. The fact that you choose to ignore this shows that you're biased against one religion. And by this, I mean the court is biased towards one religion. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. So I think there have been compelling arguments from both the side of the debate. And if someone wants to pitch in, because Akshita did put forth various questions. Yeah, Shohan.
So responding to the question about how the college being a public institution should maintain distance equidistant from most religions, like I agree with that. That's what Indian secularism should be. But in that sense, when we categorize what, like for it to be equidistant, first it needs to define what religion constitutes. And in this instance, the court did decide that wearing hijab doesn't constitute as religion. So when the state intervenes in saying that this constitutes as a religion and this doesn't constitute as religion, then how do we like accept the principle of secularism when state itself is deciding what will be religion?
Right. Yeah, that does become paradoxical, I feel, in that sense. Yeah, Nandini.
No, I'll let Sanchali go before mine.
Yeah. Okay, wait.
Yeah,
I'm
Sanchali, you wanna go?
feel like
really sorry. Yeah,
one thing-
Sanchali.
no, it's fine. I just want to say one small thing which Akshita had pointed out, like with the lawyers having the uniform. I don't think we all do have the same uniform. If it's for the case of Sikh, they still wear their turbans. Like the other religions, they don't wear their turbans. Like how many, like, I mean, that's just a small thing that I wanted to point out. Like even in uniforms, like with corroboration with what Shreya had said, like with the whole uniforms, like they still wear their turbans and everything. So why is there just a discrimination against one religion, and why should we have? So that is all. And also another thing, I don't know, I'm not so sure if it does come into effect with this. So like wearing hijabs is, if it is in like their own personal laws, so India does follow personal laws. Like every religion has their own personal laws. Article 19 says like we should practice our own religion, like freedom to practice your own religion as per your own, like whatever is written as per your personal laws. So personal laws do come into effect over here. So I would just say that it's not like they should not keep a ban on it. But obviously at the same time, I do agree with Akshita that there are some Muslim like families and men who might be forcing them, but the forcing is wrong. But keeping an oppression towards one religion, that is worse than that is all I wanted to say. And yeah, I'm
The
sorry.
same oppression could have been be doing for different religions. We are
Yes.
counteracting one religion. We are highlighting one here. For what joy? Same things are happening in every other fucking religion.
Even for a matter
Chauvinism is existing. Yeah.
even for a matter of fact, like even if we come to Hindus also, like we Hindu women have a point, like we wear bindis and sindoor. Bindis and sindoor also should then be like completely banned. I mean, if we are a secular nation, if we want everybody to like live in a proper environment where everybody is looked upon equally, then every religion's significance, like small significance, should not be allowed. That is all I wanted to like say, and I'm done.
Adding on to that, like if you think of the Indian military, you see people wearing turbans because turbans are not banned or they don't prevent. I'm talking about uniformity. What is more uniform than the military of the country? And somehow girls in school or college can't wear hijabs or put forth their religious ideas. Anyways, so my point also, the question that was a little directed towards my point was towards the point that I made on modesty. Modesty, the hypocrisy is something that you brought up about how they would rather wear a hijab to school, but not when they step out, when they go to a mall or hang out with their friends. That's where the choice comes in. Maybe the reason they wear it to school is because school is supposed to be a place of discipline, and maybe wearing a hijab kind of puts them in a mindset of discipline. But when they're out with their friends or something and they want to be in a slightly more relaxed place, or they don't feel the need to wear a hijab, they don't. So that's the entire point behind my point, which is they need to have the choice and they need to be comfortable enough to follow whatever parts of the religion whenever they want to. That's the religion doesn't necessarily have to be in a continuous stretch. Some people choose to do it in breaks. And again, I agree with Sanchali. I have actually personally come across families where religion has been stuffed down the child's throat, and they do force children to follow certain aspects of the culture even though they don't want to, and that is definitely wrong. But I don't believe that this is the best way to um, deal with that. So that was my point. So does anybody have anything else to contribute? Akshita, go ahead.
Just to further counter what everybody answered to my questions, Shreeya started off by mentioning the liberty to choice. I completely agree with it. I also agree that it's explicitly mentioned in our preamble, but that cannot be exercised over above an institution's rules and regulations. My starting argument, as I'll repeat again, is that the right to wear hijab makes the laws of an institute subservient to an individual's rights, and laws come award these choices of liberty and freedom to religion, but all of these come with certain restrictions. So we need to also adhere to the restrictions that are present. Further on, there was a mention of turbans. Turbans do not in any way violate the schools or the colleges dress code. The students are still coming in the same uniform, the same cloth, the same shoes. And as far as the lawyer's uniform is concerned, the black gown and the white ribbon and the thing to maintain a formal attire is present even if you wear a kurti or a sari below it, or you wear a bindi or a sindoor, right? So I was talking about the sense of formality that the courts require, but in this case up front there is a demand to not wear the uniform at all. So if I'm wearing anything, practicing my religion howsoever by wearing whatever, but I am adhering to the rules by wearing that gown in a court of law, it's fine. But unless I upfront disagree to adhere to any part of it, that comes as a very wrong signal. And just to represent my religion symbols in an institution of such formal nature. Further on, Shreeya kept mentioning that Muslim women are being targeted. I really fail to understand The source that she's citing, because the only official piece of document which bans the hijab as of now is the Karnataka High Court judgment, and I guess the Bombay and the Madras. I'm not sure about the other two, but that, and in that they clearly mention all forms of religious symbols. There is nothing specifically mentioned about hijab. It includes the mention of hijab, but along with other things like a saffron cloth or a blue or a green flag, it mentions everything, you know. So I really don't get that. That is where I would counter
I
it.
would argue that if we fail to see the picture on the ground of who it is being enforced against, who is banned from the schools from coming in, whereas the other groups aren't, who it was that the mobs were trying to attack, who it was that which religion the teachers belong to, whose hijabs were being taken off. I feel if we take these elements out of the equation, then we are doing an injustice to understanding the situation here. Second of all, you mentioned something in your previous points about the idea of protecting women. These are the, I mean, I would again argue, what harm is a hijab doing? Second of all, the kind of hijab that they talk about, that these girls were talking about, was in compliance with the school's colors. Was They were blue in color. They weren't in compliance with their religion, the larger religious bodies, but they were in compliance with the school's colors, and they had been wearing these for the last couple of years. It is now that the issue is being raised. Second of all, leave the students out of it, which I don't want to do, but leave the students out of it. Why are the teachers being made to take off their hijabs? What compliance of uniforms are they supposed to follow? When other teachers are wearing suits and they're also wearing suits and they're wearing their hijabs over it, why aren't they? Why are they being subject to these discriminations? Which they are, by the way. If you would have seen the videos of these incidents, they were made to take off these hijabs at the gate of the school. Second of all, this law somehow comes up in for to help whatever that the state is offering in terms of protecting Muslim women and abiding by school uniform, whatever. This law made the women who were fighting this law, the girls who were fighting this law, no concessions have been made to help them academically, which is something that they would need. A lot of them are sitting for their boards. No concessions are being made. So what kind of progress or what kind of help do you think this law is providing to them in any capacity? I mean, we have, if you want to look for only official documents, Akshita, then you are doing an injustice to the situation at hand. We have to look at the whole picture, and we have to look at the humanness of this whole picture. Looking at a court's documents signed by men and talking about a general arbitrary form of this, it's doing these women who are fighting for their religious identities and the expression of the religious and injustice. Yeah.
All right. So, as we can see, there, Akshita, why don't you go ahead? But let Akshita respond.
Thank you. So most of the questions Shreeya asked, I answered throughout my starting main argument. But just to reiterate, and the schools are public institutions. They are becoming a place of religious competition, whether the teachers are wearing or the students are wearing. You know, one starts wearing hijab, the other starts, you know, getting dressed up in another way, and it's becoming a chain, and the entire situation is getting heated up. There has to be a line. I would just end it up with one question. What if I say that I follow an XYZ religion where I need to do all sorts of stuff that my college prohibits? Would you still agree with my freedom of liberty or my freedom of religion or my freedom of expression? That's it from
All
my
right.
end.
So, as we can see, we have very diverse opinions towards this issue regarding the hijab ban, and there are two ends of the spectrum that we did witness today, and therefore we would like to bring a, wrap this discussion up by reiterating a few points that were mentioned today. So we spoke about what secularism is and what it means to be in a country as diverse as ours, where trying to be secular and accountable towards every religion. This also, we spoke about choices and modesty and feminism a lot, with the lens, with a political lens, and we saw how how religious politics also plays a role in what decisions are being taken. Furthermore, we also brought in certain topics such as certain examples such as turbans and the hijab ban in France, and what impact that had on the people, and about how secularism is a concept of a West, making it easier to enforce in a country where there aren't as many religions as compared to in a country like India, where not only do we have separate religions, but we also have communal rifts between these religions, which has created a very big question on how to implement secularism and how to create a place to stay which respects and allows everybody to follow their religion in the way that they want and in the comfort that they want. Whether we need to stop everybody from showing symbols that help them identify to their religion, or whether the selective ban of certain symbols on is something which is, or whether the current ban of certain of the symbols is specific, or if it actually is being enforced in a more general form as being claimed. So therefore, I would like to conclude this roundtable. Thank you so much for participating. This was very helpful, and the conversation was fruitful because we saw every possible approach that there is to this conversation. We saw many dimensions. So thank you, and have a great day.
Yeah, I would also like to express that it was actually really enriching kind of discussion where we did take all the dimensions and the true like a two-pronged approach towards it, and the intersection of feminism with religion and political motivation. So I think it was a fruitful discussion, and I would end this discussion now. Thank you, everyone.